Nobody expected Mexico to become one of the biggest stories of the 2026 World Cup. Yet here they are, forcing fans and experts to ask the same question. Have we been underestimating them all along? Mexico has already surprised the world, but now they're facing the match that could redefine their football history forever. If they keep this momentum alive, the football world may never look at Mexico the same way again.
Jimenez, they could go one more, it's Quiñones, Raúl Jimenez!
Mexico is a country that does not simply support its national team. It lives and dies with every touch. And for a long stretch of its history, it has done far more dying than living. For 7 consecutive World Cups, from 1994 all the way through to 2018, Mexico reached the round of 16 and got knocked out at exactly that stage. 7 times in a row, the same wall, the same heartbreak, so predictable that the supporters gave it a bitter little name. They called it El Quinto Partido, the 5th game, the match Mexico could never quite reach. It stopped being a football problem and turned into something heavier, a national anxiety handed down from one generation of fans to the next. And you could see it living in the players whenever the knockout rounds arrived. That tightening in the legs, that sense of a team quietly waiting for the collapse to show up right on schedule. Then came Qatar in 2022. And somehow, the country found a new floor beneath the one it thought it had already hit. Mexico did not even reach the 5th game it had spent decades failing to win. They went out in the group stage, their first group exit since 1978, eliminated on goal difference while they watched other nations march on without them. For a nation that treats El Tri like a second religion, that was not the sort of disappointment you shake off over a long weekend. That was a genuine crisis of faith, the kind that makes a whole country wonder aloud whether the golden years are finished for good, whether Mexican football had quietly slipped from a real force into a team that just makes up the numbers. That is the exact mood, that low, doubting, almost embarrassed mood, that this side dragged with it into a home World Cup, which is precisely why nobody saw this coming. The stakes waiting for them in 2026 are not normal stakes, and that matters enormously. Mexico is co-hosting the first ever 48-team World Cup alongside the United States and Canada, the biggest addition the sport has ever attempted. And of all the teams and all the venues, Mexico was handed the opening match inside the Estadio Azteca. That stadium is not just any ground. It is the only stadium on the planet to have hosted the final of 2 separate World Cups. The cathedral where Pelé lifted the trophy in 1970, and where Diego Maradona produced the most famous 45 minutes in the tournament's history in 1986. This is Mexico's 3rd time hosting, and here is the detail that hangs over the whole campaign like a shadow. Both of those previous home tournaments ended in the quarterfinals. The quarterfinal is the furthest Mexico has ever traveled at a World Cup in its entire existence. And on both occasions, they only got there because they were playing at home. 55 years have passed, and that ceiling has still never been broken. So the goal this summer is brutally simple and brutally exposed. Reaching the last 8 only matches the best they have ever done. And anything short of it, on home soil, at the biggest World Cup ever staged, would be written down as a failure the country would not forget. Now measure that pressure against the man who agreed to stand in front of it, because the choice of coach says a great deal about the mindset here. Javier Aguirre is back for a 3rd spell in charge of this national team, and the federation did not return to him out of nostalgia. Aguirre has lived inside the Mexican pressure cooker before. He has led El Tri at World Cups before, and he does not blink when the country's expectations start bearing down on him. He took over a team still sitting in the rubble of that Qatar humiliation, and rather than chase flair or headlines, he went to work on the backbone first. The results show in the way this side defends. For years, Mexico's knockout exits came from a soft center, a team that could press and run all afternoon, and then crack the instant a serious test arrived. Aguirre's Mexico holds its shape when matches turn ugly, defends as one connected unit, and carries a calmness under fire that recent versions of this team simply did not have. That steadiness is the first reason the rest of the world got caught off guard. Defensive steel was never the missing piece, though. And this is where the real story lives, because it arrived quietly, almost when nobody was paying attention. For the best part of a decade, Mexico's true weakness was creativity. This was a team stacked with honest runners and stubborn defenders who arrived in the final third and simply ran out of ideas. With nobody who could pick the lock on a packed defense, nobody who could see and execute the one pass that flips a stalemate into a goal, Mexico produces warriors and goalkeepers by the crate, but a genuine creator, a player who dictates the tempo of an entire team with the ball glued to his feet, is something the country has almost never had. And now, at the least expected moment in its history, they have found exactly that, wrapped up in the frame of a 17-year-old named Gilberto Rafael Mora Zambrano, the boy who has quietly become the sensation of this entire tournament. You cannot talk seriously about Mexico right now without talking about him, because he is the reason a doubting nation suddenly started believing again. When Mora drops between the lines to collect the ball, the whole shape of the team reorganizes around him. Defenders get dragged out of position simply because he demands possession. And when he turns to face forward, the game finally tips toward the opposition goal in a way Mexico has been unable to manufacture for years. He is two-footed with a stronger right, which lets him drift wide, cut inside, and finish or slide a pass through with either boot. And that alone forces opponents into committing 2 and sometimes 3 men just to smother him. Every defender they throw at the boy is a defender peeled off one of his teammates. And just like that, an attack that used to run headfirst into walls suddenly finds doors swinging open all across the pitch. What makes it almost hard to believe is that none of this stage seems too big for him. And the records are the proof. He was scarcely 15 when he first walked onto a Liga MX pitch for Tijuana, already the 3rd youngest debutant in the league's history. And he marked the occasion by setting up a goal in that same match, making himself the youngest player ever to register an assist in the competition. Barely a year later, he was a starter in the knockout rounds of a senior international tournament. And when Mexico lifted that trophy, he became the youngest footballer ever to win a major title for his country at 16 years old. Now, at 17, he has become one of the youngest players ever to start a World Cup match. And instead of shrinking under the weight of a home tournament and a nation's expectations, he has looked like the calmest man on the field. There are grown internationals who spend entire careers learning to receive under pressure and turn in a single movement. And this child does it as though the panic all around him is happening in a slower world than the one he lives in. The reassuring part for Mexican supporters is that the kid is not being asked to shoulder it alone, which was always the old trap that broke previous teams. Around him, Raul Jimenez is playing some of the most intelligent football of his entire career, dropping deep to link the play and finishing the chances that keep appearing. There is genuine pace out on the flanks, full backs who commit forward, and a midfield that finally shields the backline instead of leaving it stranded and outnumbered. For the first time in a long while, the pieces actually fit together. The steel at the back that Aguirre rebuilt, and the imagination up front that Mora provides are the 2 things Mexico has been chasing for a generation. And they have arrived at the one tournament where it matters most. None of this hands them a guarantee, and any honest look at this team has to say so plainly. Football is not an exact science. A World Cup can swing on a single refereeing decision or one leg pulled the wrong way at the wrong moment. And a side can look completely transformed through a group stage, only to meet the old ghosts the instant the knockouts begin. A 17-year-old carrying a nation's creative hopes can have one nightmare afternoon on the grandest stage of all. The same legs can tighten in the same familiar way when the 5th game comes circling back around. The genuine difference this time is the mood, and that deserves to be said clearly. This does not carry the feel of the Mexico that turned up at recent World Cups already braced for the fall. This is a side with a manager who has survived everything the job can throw at him. A defensive structure that holds firm, a supporting cast that slots together, and a creative spark young enough that he never inherited the fear in the first place. Sometimes, a team needs somebody too young to understand what he is supposed to be afraid of. Somebody who plays as though 55 years of accumulated pain were simply never handed down to him. Because belief spreads through a dressing room just as quickly as doubt ever did. So this is where Mexico stands, balanced right on the edge of everything. A lifetime of falling at the same hurdle, always somewhere far from home where there was conveniently something to blame. And now, a home World Cup with no ocean between them and the verdict. No excuse to reach for, no quiet corner to hide in, only a roaring crowd, a 55-year ceiling, a 17-year-old who plays like the fear was never his to carry, and a team that for once does not look like it believes in the curse. Now it's your turn. Does Mexico have what it takes to shock the football world, or have they already gone as far as they can? Let us know your prediction in the comments, and don't forget to come back after the match to see who got it right.